So several people have asked me for a video on how I manage my sourdough starter and how I do a basic loaf. So I'm going to do that. This video is how I maintain and feed my sourdough starter, and then I'll do a separate video on how I do a basic sourdough loaf. So you have an established sourdough starter that someone has given you. I'm making this video because a few people are getting ready to get some of mine. So a few things that you're going to need. You don't have to buy the fancy sourdough starter kits that you see online. You just need a clean jar, something to stir with, warm water, and unbleached flour. You can use bread flour or you can use all-purpose flour. There's great debate amongst the sourdough community of which one's best. I use all-purpose. It works just fine. Bread flour does great. A lot of people use bread flour. It's up to you, but I used all-purpose. The key thing to remember, it needs to be unbleached. So I use this. Sometimes it's the King Arthur brand, but I use organic, unbleached, all-purpose flour. So you need that, warm water, and then you need a container to store your sourdough starter in. So you can use a mason jar, and you just want to have like the little lid to set on top. You don't have to have the ring to seal it down unless you're going to store it in the fridge for a long time. You just want to have the lid to sit on top. Some people tell you to use like a cloth wrap or a paper towel. I have found that my dough tends to dry out and forms, I don't know the proper terminology for it, but forms like a scab on top of it because the air gets to it. So if I use like a piece of plastic wrap, or if I just set this on top, that doesn't happen. The dough stays moist, and that's what you want. So just a jar, clean jar, something to start with. So you're going to get your sourdough starter. Ignore my messy jar. I've been using it for several weeks. I'm getting ready to put it in a clean jar. So you're going to take your starter, and I'm just going to take this, my starter right here. She is unfed, so she is kind of runny. She's hungry. So I feed mine once a day. You can get into the depths of the internet trying to figure out how often to feed it. I'm lazy and I have a very busy life, so I feed mine once a day. I'm just putting this into my other jar. I know you can't see it, but I'm just transferring it over so you can see better. I feed mine once a day, and I've gotten to the point where I don't even measure. I just know that it needs to look like thick pancake mix. So if you've ever made pancakes, you know what the pancake batter looks like, and you just want it to be a thick pancake batter consistency. So what I tell people, and what I did in the beginning, was I did a 1-to-2 ratio for my water to flour. So you're always going to do more flour than water. That way you can thicken it up. So recommend doing a 1/4 cup. I do better in cups. I don't like having to measure on a scale. But you can do a 1/4 cup of warm water to a 1/2 cup of flour. Stir it together, and it should be that thick pancake consistency. So I got starter all over my hand. Hold on. So clean jar. I have my sourdough starter here. So I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of water to this, and then a 1/2 cup of my unbleached all-purpose flour, and I'll show you what it's supposed to look like. Now, when you look online and you see information on starter ratios, you'll see like a 1-to-1-to-2 or a 1-to-2-to-2, stuff like that. That just means the amount of starter you have, the amount of water you have, and the amount of flour you have in your container. So I'm gonna do a 1-to-1-to-2 ratio. So I've got a 1/4 cup of starter in here. I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of water and stir it together, and then a 1/2 cup of flour. Sometimes, depending upon the humidity in the air here in Eastern North Carolina, it gets really humid, so you might have to adjust it for humidity, but you're just looking for that pancake consistency. So 1/4 cup of my starter, I'm adding a 1/4 cup of warm water. Again, warm. You don't want it to be hot, just warm. And what I do is give it a little stir. Just to kind of mix in that batter a little bit. I'm trying to get it off my spatula here. Alright, so pretty liquidous right now. And then I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of flour. It's not a packed, it's not perfect. I just scoop it out and it's about a 1/2 cup. Add that in there. And then we stir it around. You want to make sure you stir it really well and that all of that flour is mixed in really well. You don't want any raw flour left in there. And I'm just scraping down the sides of the jar because I don't like chunks of wet flour sitting on the side of my jar, because then it starts to look like that and gets messy and I don't like it. Oops. Okay, so this is stirred together pretty good. So thick pancake consistency, like pancake batter consistency. I could add a little bit more water to it, but I'm not going to, because it's going to be 24 hours before it gets fed again. It'll get fed again tomorrow when I get off work. So this provides, using that 1:1 to 2 ratio, for me, provides enough food in that flour to feed the yeast for 24 hours. So there we go. And then all I do is I set my lid on top of it, which I need to grab my clean one, but I'm going to use my dirty one just for example. I'm going to set my lid on top of it. And if it is winter time, then, and my house is cold, or if you're a person in the summer months who keep a cold house, then you're just going to want to put a little coat on your jar. So I just wrap a towel around it and secure it with a rubber band to keep this warm. And I set it in my microwave so drafts can't get to it. But where it is 80 degrees outside right now, I've been leaving this on the counter and it's been doing fine. But you'll notice in a few hours, you'll start noticing bubbles forming and you'll notice your dough rise. And one thing that you see people do online is they'll mark their dough. So my dough level is about right here. So they'll actually secure a rubber band. Let me find one real quick. They'll take a rubber band and they'll actually mark where their dough sits at after they mix it fresh. So mine sits about right there. And so they know where the dough started. And then they can measure when it doubles in size. Sometimes it'll more than double, but you know that it is fermenting and rising the way that it needs to. But yeah, that's how we feed our sourdough. Fast forward, it's the next day, and I have my sourdough starter here. So she has already risen, reached her peak, and you can tell right here she's gotten higher. You can kind of tell by the shadow. She's already started falling, so she has already reached her peak. When you want to cook bread, you want to cook your bread, or you want to make your dough for your bread loaves when it's at peak. That's when you want to do it. Have I made it when it started falling? Yes. Did it cook fine? Yes. But ideally, you pull the starter out and use it to mix your dough with when it reaches peak. But mine has started falling, and so that is what it looks like on the inside. See, she's kind of runny and moving today, whereas last night when I showed it to you, she was thick and wouldn't move much. So she is ready to be fed again. Editing me along with my supervisor, who is asleep on the floor next to me. Just as a reminder, that when you are pulling starter out of your jar, when it hits its peak to make your bread dough with, make sure you leave a little bit of starter behind. That way you can feed it with the water and flour and bulk up that little bit of starter left behind, so you'll have plenty of starter for your next loaf of bread. So again, when you pull out your starter to out of the jar to make a loaf of bread, leave a little bit left in that jar so you can feed it and keep your starter going, and you'll have plenty for the next time you want to make bread. Hope that makes sense. All right, back to 2 hours ago me. So we have our starter here. She is hungry and ready to be fed. I'm just going to scrape down the sides where I was rotating her around to show you in the video. It's because I really don't like messy sides. All right, so when you are feeding your sourdough, you want to discard half. The only reason you do that is so you don't have to feed it so much flour. If you want to really bulk it up because you're going to be making multiple loaves, then you don't have to discard half. But if you're just feeding it to maintain it, or you're just going to be making one loaf, then you can discard half. I do not throw away my discard. I save it. This container stays in my refrigerator, and I put my discard in there. And I save it so I can make discard recipes. My family's favorite discard recipes are cinnamon rolls and pretzel bites. They absolutely love the pretzel bites. So I took about half. It don't have to be exact. I just eyeball it. I just essentially scoop out a generous amount. All right, and that's about what's left in there. Okay. And then from here, you're just going to feed your sourdough starter the same way that I've already shown you. So roughly a 1/4 cup of warm water and a 1/2 cup of flour. So 1/4 cup of warm water, dump it in, give it a little mixy mix, just so the established starter mixes in well with the water. And then add in roughly a 1/2 cup of flour. When you're mixing your starter or you're feeding your starter, if you notice it's too runny, after you do this ratio, you can add in a little bit more flour. If it's too thick, you can add in a little bit more water. Your measurements don't have to be exact. You just want that thick, pancake-like consistency. I've made a mess. Oh, gracious. So, mine, while this is a good enough consistency, I like to have mine a little bit thicker. So I will add in a little bit more flour. So let me show you what this looks like. So she's thick, and this will be sufficient. She'll just be a little bit more hungry than usual when I get home tomorrow to feed her. But I'm going to add a little bit more flour and mix her together, which I won't be able to do one-handed. That's all she should need. That's a generous pinch, a couple of pinches. I'll get all that mixed in and show you what she looks like. Remember, you never want to wash this down the sink, so I just take a paper towel and wipe that off really good, and then give it a good little wash. Throw this away. Put our lid back on our jar. It's not airtight, it just kind of sits up there, and set this to the side. My house is warm. It is a typical North Carolina summer, so pretty warm. Not summer, spring. It's warm in here, so this will be fine sitting out on the counter. But if you keep your house cool, particularly in the wintertime, if your house is cool or drafty, remember you can take that dish towel, wipe or wrap around it, and then just set it in the microwave to keep drafts off of it, and that'll keep it warm enough to help it continue to grow. But yeah, that's how you maintain your sourdough starter. That's how I store my discard. And yeah, so when it reaches its peak in a few hours, again, that's when it hits its max height in the jar. It's nice, bubbly, and active, and smelling good. I can pull some out and make fresh bread with it if I want to. So yeah, that's it. a little tip, if I hadn't already shared it, if you don't want to feed it every day because you're not going to be making bread on the regular. I'm trying to find my clothespin to close my bag up, but we'll just set it to the side. If you don't want to feed your sourdough starter every day because you're not going to be making bread regularly, you just want to have it on hand. I usually do 1 or 2 loaves a week, and that's usually on the weekend. So on Sunday, I will feed my starter, leave it sitting out on the counter for an hour or 2, just so it can begin to eat. And then I put an airtight lid on it, and I store it in the fridge for the rest of the week. And that way I don't have to feed it every day. And then on the weekend, the day before I want to make bread, I pull it out, feed it real good, and then she's ready to go for bread making again. So I hope that helps you on your journey with sourdough. The very basics, kind of a rogue way to do it, but hopefully it's a little bit less complicated if you get overwhelmed by all the terminology and the ratios and you have to do this, that, and the other. It's a lot simpler than what people make it out to be. So hope that helps you.